I'm Angie Coiro. Welcome to another hour of In Deep. You might have heard this week about the suicide of Norman Rousseau, a California man overwhelmed by Wells Fargo's allegedly inept and callous foreclosure on his home. We'll talk to his wife and to activists on both coasts telling you who's on your side when it comes to mortgage holder malfeasance, fraud, or just plain stupidity. That's coming up on In Deep. Good news from the front of a battle that we've been waging on and on here at In Deep Radio with your help and activism. That is the battle against ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council. News came over today that, in fact, they have lost one of their very large and prominent supporters, and that is Amazon. Amazon has pulled away from this group that drafts legislation behind closed doors with legislators and the heads of corporations. Well, it's downright un-American, isn't it? And the folks at PR Watch, the folks at Color of Change, and those at the Center for Media and Democracy have been working very hard against ALEC. The news that Amazon has pulled away is absolutely wonderful. What does that mean for the future of ALEC? And what does it mean about dislodging some of the more stubborn contenders over there, including Walmart and the Koch brothers? Let's talk to Brendan over at the Center for Media and Democracy. Brendan, a very happy day.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Well, let's talk about what went into this decision, because although a lot of other organizations and corporations pulled away from ALEC in this very bad publicity that was coming up around it, Amazon almost seems like it's too big to care. People are addicted to buying from Amazon. They have low prices on top of everything else, which in this kind of economy can outweigh every other consideration. If you were to speculate, what would you think finally made a difference that someone as big and powerful as Amazon said, we don't want to be affiliated anymore with ALEC?
Yeah, so Amazon is a newer ALEC member. We believe that they became a member last year in 2011. Many of the other ALEC members, like Walmart, the National Rifle Association, Koch Industries, they've been ALEC members for a long time. So I think they're much more invested in the organization. And the way that Amazon announced that it would be dropping ALEC was also a little bit different. Some of the other groups, there were behind-the-scenes discussions with them, and I think once word got around to management about what ALEC really was, they realized that they didn't want their brand associated with ALEC. And in the case of Amazon, around 500,000 people signed petitions calling on Amazon to cut ties with ALEC. And these petitions were signed by members of Color of Change, Credo Action, People for the American Way, Progressive Change Campaign Committee, and a number of local groups in Washington State where Amazon is located. And then they delivered these signatures to Amazon's annual meeting in Seattle, which is taking place today. And inside that meeting, Amazon's general counsel, Michelle Wilson, announced that Amazon would not be renewing their ALEC membership. So it was not exactly a shareholder action, but it was at least surrounding the shareholder meeting that Amazon was holding today. And this is a really positive step. Amazon's the 16th company to drop ALEC in recent months.
Number 15 also dropped out within the past week, and that's a smaller group, but everyone counts. Tell me about that other company.
Yeah, so that was Scantron, and I think if you're a little bit younger, you're probably familiar with them from your high school standardized tests. It's the group that produces the bubble test that you fill in with a number 2 pencil, and they were a member of the Education Task Force, and it appeared that they were involved mostly because they wanted to, edge in on some of the increases in standardized testing and to be able to access legislators to maybe get something written into law where they would use Scantron tests. But they've announced that they were going to leave, I believe it was earlier this week.
Well, you mentioned some of the others who are the long-time investors and interest holders in ALEC, and that includes the Koch brothers and Walmart. So it seems to me like the low-hanging fruit left first, and now Amazon is a big victory, but as you said, they haven't been a member for so long. What about these stalwarts, the ones who we know to be conservative companies, the ones that we know have a desperate interest in the kind of legislation that ALEC puts out? What will it take to budge them?
Well, I think perhaps maybe the longevity. I think that there, like you said, there was an initial wave of groups that left or corporations that left, and some of these other groups might be waiting it out to see if this campaign is going to last. If it is going to get into the broader consciousness that people really are concerned about ALEC and that people are going to hold these these corporations accountable if they continue to fund ALEC and they continue to fund a group that's going to work to suppress voting and encourage gun violence and promote anti-immigrant sentiment. And we're not giving up. We and our allies are going to continue working and continue campaigning against these groups and continuing to expose ALEC for what it really is.
I think it probably has a likewise very good effect to let legislators know that we're watching them now, knowing the ALEC connections, and we're watching for ALEC duplicated laws across the country.
Yeah, and legislators have also been departing from ALEC. I think there's been around 54 legislators who have announced so far, and those are also really, really positive steps. The same with if it's too extreme, if ALEC is too extreme for Amazon and Coca-Cola, it's too extreme for our elected officials. And you're right. And with the bills now available, with the ALEC model legislation out in the public domain, we have the resources to really be able to track an ALEC bill as it moves through our legislature. Legislators can no longer pass off an ALEC bill as their own brilliant idea without people holding them accountable.
Brendan Fisher, I thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate your making time.
Yeah, thank you.
Brendan Fisher with the Center for Media and Democracy. This is In Deep. I'm Angie Coiro. The foreclosure crisis across the country is familiar to all of us, but this depression is taking on new dimensions when a difficulty working out a foreclosure with a bank becomes so unbearable that one of the people involved commits suicide, and that's exactly what happened on May 13th. Norman Rousseau from a town outside Los Angeles, California, had worked so hard to get his mortgage straightened out, but Wells Fargo moved to foreclose nonetheless. He bought a home for them to move into, a mobile home. He couldn't get the engine working properly. His wife heard a shot, went outside, and Norman Rousseau was dead. Oriane Rousseau is continuing with her lawsuit against Wells Fargo, and she's now working to get everyone else familiar with what's happening on this scene. Let me ask you, since this has occurred in your life, have you been hearing similar stories from other people? Or does it seem as though what happened to you was unusual in any way?
Absolutely. I hear from people all the time the same story of what the banks are doing, that they refuse payment and that they drag them literally down to hell. And I have heard of suicides as well, but mine seem to be so drastic because my story, it should have never happened because we had all the proof, we had all the payments, we had everything. It was a senseless death. It should have never happened. And I hear this throughout the board from people over and over how banks treat them and what they do with their dirty deeds and their dirty politics in order to bring people into foreclosure.
So when you say in order to bring people into foreclosure, it almost sounds like there's a deliberateness. Do you think you were up against stupidity, or were you up against something more evil than that? Something where the
I think it was ignorance. It was they have a record of incompetence and cruelty against homeowners, and I think this is done on purpose. Because why would a homeowner who has the money would let their home go in foreclosure? Mm-hmm. Like in my case, I had that money. I had that reinstatement. I had everything. Why would I go as a homeowner and let my house default? That doesn't make sense. And so many other people are in the same boat, but the banks, that's what I'm saying, is the banks refuse payments, and then that's where they drive from. That's something that they work there.
That's something that I've heard from a number of people. In fact, a friend of my own acquaintance, and I was trying to help her out with Bank of America. This is a very weird situation where you'll get on the phone with a bank, and I believe you went through this, where they'll say, you'll be told to make payments, ignore that, don't worry, you don't need to make a payment. That's just peculiar.
Exactly. And we were in a modification, and that was we tried to modify. First of all, the bank knew very well that we were not eligible for modification or refinancing. They refused us at the end anyway, but their excuse was well, you're in modification, we cannot take payments. Well, I pushed 2 more payments on them anyway, and then they totally refused. And this is happening over and over throughout this country. And the banks know exactly what they're doing. That's how they bring these people down.
When you were dealing with Wachovia, which is now part of Wells Fargo, one of the elements you had to deal with was repeated collection calls, repeated phone calls every day, as many as 8 per day. What did these people say when you tried to explain to them what was going on?
Okay, first of all, I can tell you that. First of all, they claimed they didn't get April's payment of 2009. That's how it started. And I always went personally into the bank with a cashier's check, always with a cashier's check. I paid with cash for the cashier's check. So they took the cashier's check, and the next couple of days I went back and I wanted to have a copy of the backside, which showed that they cashed it. Mm-hmm. Okay? So then I got letter after letter after letter every month. You didn't pay your mortgage. You didn't pay your mortgage for May, June, July, August, September, on and on and on and on. Anyhow, finally the collection calls, it was horrible. I mean, this phone was nonstop. And I didn't even answer anymore. Finally, I had it. I called collection, and I talked to a gentleman there, and he pulled it up and he said, there's nothing wrong with it. It's right here. So I said, what would you suggest? And he said, please write a letter of dispute, which I did. Mm-hmm. And they still kept on going and going and going, and they were right on this particular payment till this day. So anyhow, then our house went into foreclosure, and my attorney, we have a wonderful, wonderful attorney, which is Chris Gardis. She's a wonderful person. And she was fighting for us to keep the house. And then it came down to it that from the foreclosure came the sale date. Well, they sent us a reinstatement if we want to reinstate. Well, you were supposed to have 20 days for that. They gave us less than 48 hours, and on a Friday, late afternoon.
What have you found out? If I can move forward just a bit and then come back to the rest of your story. What have you found out subsequently about what can happen to a bank? I mean, here they are. First of all, you were pressured into a kind of loan you weren't that keen on in the first place, and then there were other irregularities in your account that they had an estimate of your husband Norman's earnings that he hadn't claimed, but it looked like the loan salesman had inflated the income to make the loan go through.
Oh my goodness! Yes, let me tell you, when we saw our loan papers, I mean, our house, at the beginning we paid $225,000 for it, and then we refinanced one time, and then we wanted to do the loan modification. As we looked at it, it put $775,000 down. My goodness, are they insane? You know, and my income, I wish I would make this income. I made triple and quadruple just to bring that loan through.
And this was after you had signed for the loan, or were you able to go to them and say, hey,
yes.
Okay. So.
Yes, and they literally pushed that loan on us, and the lies they gave us, you know, it's an arm, but you know what, interest rates will drop, and your payments will drop. Well, it got higher and higher every time, higher and higher and higher, and our interest rates higher and higher and higher.
I'm talking to Oriane Rousseau, her husband Norman, and she had a home through Wachovia, now part of Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo started a foreclosure procedure that, in retrospect, seems to have been anything but justified. Oriane is still in a lawsuit against Wells Fargo. Her husband Norman committed suicide. Oriane, let's talk about what you have found since then in terms of what level of punishment or retribution or any kind of regulation where you can point to what the bank has done and say, look, this is illegal. They're supposed to give me a week or to 10 days or 20 days. They gave me 48 hours. What are the mechanisms of making them behave?
That is a good question. Well, I can answer that very clearly because the bank knows that it committed fraud, and it was proven that they committed fraud, and they know it. And so, therefore, they're trying everything to wiggle themselves out. And the eviction actually came from that they still claim we didn't pay, and that they still claim we didn't have the payment for the reinstatement. That's why they evicted us. And when the eviction notice, no sheriff came to the house. They just slapped it on the door, and we had 5 days to get out. 5 days.
5 days in a house that you claimed you had made all the payments on.
Exactly.
Even though at sometimes the bank was telling you not to make the payments, you were forcing payments on them.
Exactly. They know they did wrong. They know.
What are they telling you now?
About it.
What are they telling you now?
What they're telling me now, they're still claiming I didn't have the money. Till this day, they have all the paperwork from my attorney. They have all the proof. They still claim I didn't have that money. I still didn't make that payment. Till this day.
Wow. Now, I know that when this story hit the headlines and everyone who read it was appalled, Wells Fargo suddenly became, at least publicly, very helpful. And they wanted to say, oh, we're going to forestall this foreclosure. We're going to let her stay in the house. What's actually happening?
No, it's wrong. Wrong. I'm sorry. It's wrong. Because I know I was on the 2 o'clock on Channel 2 on the news, and then there was a phrase from Wells Fargo, oh, we're so sorry, we're working with Oriane and Rousseau and trying to make things better, and we're in contact with her. My attorney called me and said, did you hear anything? No. I said, did you hear anything? No. I said, that's bull.
They haven't even been in touch with you about this?
No, nothing. Not with me. They cannot with me anyway, and not with my attorney. No.
I have to commend you. I mean, even just listen to your voice, I can hear this strength you have in your anger, and I hope you're feeling all the support of the people who are enraged on your behalf, and you're getting support from organizations as well in your fight.
Well, thank you, because he left us with nothing. I have nothing. We're on charity right now in a motel room from our church, and I'm very, very thankful for that, because he left us absolutely with nothing. I don't know where we're going to go next week. I have no idea, and I'm very thankful that there's a charity who people maybe have a heart and help us a little bit. So,
I'm very grateful for your time, and I'm sorry for what you're going through, and I'm glad you're at least getting the public support, and my commendations to your lawyer, who seems to be helping you a great deal. Yes.
And can I say one more thing?
Yes,
here?
Absolutely, please.
I know they want to pass a homeowner's bill of rights, which includes for the right for a homeowner to defend his home in a court. And that bill is already there, but of course the banks are fighting it. And I can only ask everybody who's a homeowner, even if they're in good standards, whatever, please vote for this bill, because there are millions, not only here in California, there are millions of people throughout the U.S. who are going through this, and God help us all. Nobody should go through what I went through, that I lost my husband. My husband doesn't come back anymore. But a tragedy always needs to happen first before something is done. And it is so sad that it has to be this way. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I absolutely do. Yes.
And these people, and I want to say, these people who are in office now, we the people, we voted them in. So please be there for us, because we the people can easily vote you out.
I absolutely hope that's the case. Oriane Rousseau, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we're going to continue with this topic. As she mentioned, the Homeowners Bill of Rights is next on the platter here at In Deep. I'm Angie Coiro.
This life I live is killing me. I guess I've drowned in misery. I've been drinking all along, and I'm sinking like a stone. No, you won't have me, no matter what I see that there ain't no pleasing you. I've worked so hard to make things right. Now it's just me and the Bible tonight.
This is In Deep. I'm Angie Coiro. We're talking about malfeasance, fraud, all kinds of things that the banks and other loan officers have been doing to make foreclosure such a big problem for so many people. And of course, this extends far beyond Oriane Rousseau and her story. It's happening in every state of the country. What exactly is going on and what can you do about it? That's our focus this hour. And we're talking now to Mimi Pierce-Johnson. She's an activist with the New York Communities for Change, where she's a member, and she's been working with one homeowner after another to help them face the banks. And Mimi, first, welcome to the show. I'm glad we have you.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
And, you know, from talking to Oriane and some of the stories that we've been looking into behind the scenes here, the theme that comes up again and again is you have one or two people, the homeowners, against this monolithic bank. They don't even have one particular person they talk to. They get shuttled from department to department. They get this bit of advice from one piece of the bank, and then another bank tells them something in direct conflict with that. Is that what you're hearing from the homeowners that you're dealing with?
Oh, absolutely. And this is something that's been going on for years. It's just a matter that now that we're casting a light on it, that more and more people are talking about it, and people like yourself putting it out there on the airwaves, that we are able to have a conversation about it. But it's horrible, the stories after stories that, for homeowners facing foreclosure.
Well, I think that the reason so many people are looking up and paying attention now is to imagine that a man who had been in a steady relationship, he had his wife, they had their dream home, they were regular with their payments, and Norman Rousseau eventually thrust out of his home, thrust out of his financial security, and ultimately committing suicide. One of the things that surprised me when we talked to Oriane is that she says that's actually not unheard of. This is the one that grabbed everybody's attention, but it's that bad for a number of years now.
Yeah, it's true. And, it's one thing if you lose your job and you no longer have an income and you can go out there and get a job, or you can support yourself and your wife or whatever. But it's another thing that not only you have that personal pressure on yourself, but now you're getting the phone calls. And the sad part about what the banks do to people that most people probably don't know, and I know this firsthand, is when you're talking to someone on the phone that says to you, okay, yeah, we can help you. Why don't you send me this paper and that paper? And don't forget your current pay stubs. So to someone who's speaking to your bank, who's holding your mortgage, you say to yourself, okay, great, the banks are helping me. And so you send those papers in, and you've got confirmation, they received it, and then you don't hear from them. So you make that other call because it's important to you. So you call and you're like, hey, I sent my paperwork and, I got a confirmation. I know it went through. I know so-and-so has it. And they'll say, and now you hear somebody typing away and you're thinking, you're getting help. And all of a sudden they say, oh, we don't have those papers. Can you send them again? And, and by the way, so-and-so is no longer your service person. You're going to have to call this person. So weeks and weeks go by with this nonsense. It's a charade, and weeks and weeks turns into months and months. And before you know it, you're a year into this, and now you're getting phone calls. So the very institution that you thought was helping you, they're getting you're getting the phone calls. And now it's no longer we're helping you. We're going to take you home. And to someone who does not have a support group like New York Communities for Change and the Home Defenders, to say, no, I'm not going to lose my home. You're going to give me a loan modification. You're going to, you're going to help me with the interest rate, and you're going to take away some of the principal, and we're going to work on this together. If you don't know that you have that kind of support group, all of that happens is an added pressure. And that comes with the kids, with the spouse, and your whole life deteriorates. And if you don't know you have that kind of support, unfortunately, they're committing suicide and who are falling into this depressed state that you're going to be homeless. That is a horrible feeling.
And you say that you've actually, this firsthand. Is this something you went through?
Oh, definitely. That is one of the reasons why I've become a part of New York Communities for Change, because when I originally, my mortgage originally started with Long Beach, who then turned into, Washington Mutual, who then turned into Chase. So for 6 years after I lost my income and my husband lost his income, we were trying, I just thought by, following the information and the instructions that the bank was giving me, I was getting somewhere. But after 6 years, I said, forget this. This is not just me. This is all across this country. And I'm not going to be the one that they scare out of my home. I'm not leaving. So I started to work with New York Communities for Change, and I found out so many other homeowners with the same story. I mean, if it was just me that, okay, so they lost the papers and they went from, customer service person rep to another, that's one thing. But if every person that I've spoken to with foreclosure situation, or even that their home are worth less than the mortgage, we have the same story. So if we all have the same story, why aren't we pushing back on these banks that you cannot control us anymore? We're going to stick together and we're going to fight against the banks. And this is basically what I have decided to do. And anyone that I come in contact with or I'm interviewed, I say to everyone, do not leave your home. Fight for the right to have a roof over your head. And
well, now, let me interrupt. Mimi, let me interrupt you, because that's one thing I'm constantly hearing from, if you permit me to say, the other side. There's a lot of attitude out there that, hey, you had a job, your husband had a job, you lost your job, you lost your home. That's too bad, but it happens. And what's the bank supposed to do? Let you stay there for free? What do you say to them?
Well, here's the thing. When I had money to give to Washington Mutual, and I said to them, I've been putting, I have money aside that I want to catch up on my mortgage. So can I do a loan? I didn't even know what a loan modification was at that time. And I said, can I do something with my mortgage that I put it on the back end of it? So I actually explained what I wanted to do. Lo and behold, it was a loan modification. The first thing they said was, oh, okay, yeah, we can do a loan modification. That's what that's called. But don't send us any money, because if you either catch up, or you either catch up and pay what you are owed in arrears, or you do the loan modification. But you can't do you can't do both. I said, but if I don't send you any money, I'm going to be in more trouble. She says, no, that's the way it has to be. I said, okay, so how much do I owe? At the time, I owed about $30,000. I wanted to give them $20,000, and they said, "Oh no, but it's going to be about $45,000 with the lawyer fees and all the other fees." I said, "But that's not fair." I said, "But you won't take $20,000, and you rather that I fall further behind?" And the answer was yes. And this is not just me. This is all across the country. It's the same.
That's exactly
the same.
Yeah, that's exactly the story we heard from Oriane Rousseau. We're going to continue this conversation with Mimi Pierce-Johnson in just a moment, taking a break here on In Deep Radio. She's got good advice. Keep listening. We'll be right back. In Deep Radio is a production of Talkback Media. We are supported in part by our listeners. Talkback Media produces discussions on key political, social, and cultural issues, available for live, digital, audio, and video venues. Learn more online at indeepradio.com. And if you are in a position to help us keep on the air, click one of the PayPal links on the side of the page. One-time gifts or a small monthly donation, whatever works for you. We appreciate it. Thanks. It's In Deep. I'm Angie Coiro. We're on the topic of foreclosures and misbehavior on the part of banks. Talking to Mimi Pierce-Johnson. She's a member of New York Communities for Change. We were talking about her own experience with foreclosures. And Mimi, you mentioned in there the home defenders, and I'm assuming these are not guys in tights and capes that show up out of the sky, but they sound like it. They sound like the superheroes of the foreclosure movement.
Yes, actually, that was my first thought when we, started this whole process. But it's true. If we as homeowners that's going through all this don't band together, the banks are going to continue on the bad behavior, the bad policies of the mortgages. I mean, there are mechanisms right now that the government has in place to help homeowners, but unfortunately, the banks still are in control of what they do with everyone's mortgages. So this is the reason why we are banding together, and the main focus is so that the principal of the mortgage will come down. We want principal reduction. We want the rates to go down, and then just to modify the loans. We're not asking for a handout. A lot of people think that, we're asking for a handout. Let us stay in the house for free. Who wants that? It's not an honorable thing to do. You work hard. You have your money to pay your mortgage. You should be able to do that. And if millionaires and billionaires can go into an institution and say, let me refinance or let me restructure my loan, whether it's a business loan or their own home mortgage, if that same institution can do it for them, why aren't you doing it for mainstream? Why aren't you doing it for the everyday person that just wants a roof over your head? And that's the part that I think a lot of people don't understand. It's not a handout. We're not asking, let's take the taxpayers' money and pay off these mortgages for people so that they can just squat in their homes. That's not what we're asking for. We're simply asking you to restructure the loan. You do it every day for everybody else. Do it for the Americans who are fighting so hard to just stay in their home. If you don't want to stay in your home, it's not for you. But if you want to stay in your home, get together with homeowners all across this country, and let's fight to stay in our home.
Well, in fact, later this hour, we're going to be talking to a Californian who's working hard here with the Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment, and we're going to be talking about a homeowner bill of rights that's tailored for California. There's one that's also pending for on the federal level, so we'll talk about that later in the show. But Mimi, let me talk to you about how a homeowner gets in touch with you, and they say, we have tried everything we can with the bank. They won't talk to us, or they give us conflicting reports. What happens then? What do you do with that person?
Well, the first thing I say to them is gather all your papers, because the great thing that I do is fight. I love going up to J.P. Morgan Chase headquarters in New York City and demanding to give letters or to tell them what they're doing is not right. That's my thing. I get excited about that because I'm voicing my opinion. But we also have another side where we do take the paperwork, and we have an organization that works with us who goes through the process of giving the paperwork and calling the bank, making sure the paperwork that you have given to the banks are the correct things. So that's an advocate on that side. But the other thing is we have to push back on the banks. No matter how many mechanism that the government puts out there so that the banks will do the right thing, we all know in this movement the banks are not doing the right thing. And if they do it for some, they don't do it for all. If someone is working and you're qualified, you have some kind of income coming in and you want to stay in your home, the banks should, after all, we did bail them out when they were in trouble, they should be able to say, let me look at your paperwork, you have some income coming in, let me help you. Let me do the loan modification. But we all know they don't do that. So the first thing I say to someone is, don't be scared. Don't be scared. Don't be discouraged. Stay in your home. We'll teach you how to fight. We'll teach you how to go to the banks, not letting the banks come and say to you, we want your house. Do you know in this country, we are living in a country where an institution that can say to you, we want you out. Yeah, we've made money off of you, and when we take you out, we're going to board up the home, and no one is going to live there, but we're still going to do it, and no one is pushing back. No one is going to say we can't do it because it's perfectly legal.
Well, here's
this is what we're dealing with.
Here's part of what I don't get, and in fact, we were talking about this in the studio, and we can't quite figure it out. Right now, the banks across America are sitting on who knows how many foreclosed or abandoned homes. And the market, although it's starting to pick up here and there, the market is still softer than it needs to be for those. Why is it not in the interest of the banks to work with a homeowner who's already there, who's got potential to pay the mortgage, than it is to put yet another unsold, boarded up house on their books? What's their motivation for keeping this? But they're not getting money out of anyone. The house is.
They're still making deals. They're still making deals. People think that they're just sitting there not making deals. The banks are still making deals. You can foreclose Chase could foreclose and still sell it to somebody else. So they're still making the only people that are not making any deals and are not profiting from this are the homeowners that's now in a shelter on the street, and that hurts everyone. And the banks don't care about that. See, the thing we have to understand is the way that this movement is going is that it's really not we're fighting a righteous fight. It's a moral fight because the banks can get away with what they're getting away with. So, for us to think logically, there is no logical reason for it. But what we do know is when you have a home that's boarded up, it doesn't matter how nice your neighborhood is. Your property value just went down. Then you have the crime coming in because there will be people wanting to go into that home and steal the piping and everything else that's in that home. So now it's an unsafe structure. Then you have gangs and everything else coming into that home. So you are eroding the community, and if that keeps happening, 2-3 houses, what happens to our schools? Our schools are now attacked because the kids have to move out. You have less of, you're moving into a community because you have great schools, great community, and now if you have these boarded up homes, you're destroying that community. And the banks don't care. And that's the thing that I wish that everyone would understand. Once you start having banks who are in your community, who are not going after homeowners to help keep them in their homes, your community will be destroyed little by little. You may not understand why the next door neighbor's house, all of a sudden the grass is tall and it's unkept, because they moved out in the middle of the night. Because there's still that stigma out there that the banks are being hurt because people are not paying for their mortgages. But what they don't tell you is they tell us, don't pay for it because we're going to give you a loan modification, even though it's going to take years for that to happen, but we're going to give it to you. And it's a lie. And that's the thing people have to understand.
And you know what? You just gave us too, Mimi, is you gave us a great reason for everyone who thinks this doesn't apply to them, even if they cannot see themselves in a foreclosure situation. It matters to their neighborhood. It matters to their schools. And with that, I'm afraid I have to let you go. It's been a fabulous conversation. And I really admire your passion. I'm so glad you're working with New York Communities for Change. And we're going to put a link.
I love it.
Good. They need you. And we're going to put a link to that up on our website, nycommunities.org. Mimi, I wish you the absolute best. And thanks for everything you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. And Mimi Pierce-Johnson is a member of New York Communities for Change. And again, that and all of our other links are up on our website. That's indeepradio.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, In Deep with Angie Coiro. You can follow us on Twitter @InDeepRadio. We're coming on back with Peggy Mears with the Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment here on In Deep Radio.
Take the same old knife and grab yourself a slice of the doozers that you call a papa.
This is In Deep. I'm Angie Coiro. Well, if you were just tuning in, we're talking this hour about foreclosures across the country, foreclosure horror stories, and how a number of consumer organizations have gotten together to help the homeowners and to urge the government to do a better job at regulating these misbehaving banks and loan companies. We're talking now with Peggy Mears. She is an organizer for the Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment, or ACE, ACCE. They are online at calorganize.org. Peggy, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. And Mamie Pierce-Johnson told us that she personally had gone through foreclosure issues with her bank, and she put her feet down and said, I'm not going. I am not going. Now, you've also had your own story, your own experience with this.
Yeah, sure have, yeah.
Tell us what you went through.
Yeah. Basically, what we call dual tracking. We thought we were being considered for a loan modification, but at the same time, they were processing the foreclosure. And unexpectedly, we received paperwork saying that they were going to foreclose on us in 30 days. And, I mean, this is something where we had tried to get a modification. I think it started in, 2008. And we did a trial modification. You're only supposed to do it for 3 months, and then after that, they're supposed to tell you if you got a permanent mod or not. We paid the trial for 9 months, and in the 10th month, that's when we found out that we were going to be foreclosed upon. Mm. So, and it's such a common situation of what I went through. So many hundreds of thousands, millions of Americans are going through that exact situation where it's what we call dual tracking, when they know that they're foreclosing as well as telling you that you're going to do a loan modification. And with the loan modification, when you call them, as we did, we were not past due yet, but because I had lost my job and my husband was self-employed and his industry was on strike, he knew that we weren't going to be able to pay the note. So he called the bank, and the bank asked him, they said, well, are you past due? He says, no. They said, well, don't call us unless you're 2 to 3 months past due. There's nothing we can do to help you right now.
Wait until you're in trouble. Wait until you're over your head and then call. Right.
So what they do is they make you default on your mortgage, and that puts you in foreclosure territory. So the usually with averaging the loan modification that banks tell people that they're going to get, the average person goes through this odyssey for 2 or 3 years.
2 or 3 years?
Trying to get a loan modification.
Oh, now, I think some people have the impression that since President Obama came in and he put some programs in the works with the banks, and people can go back now and say, I lost my job, I can't find work, I need an emergency modification. I think there's an impression out there that this situation's already getting better.
No, it's getting worse, because with the settlement of the 49 states attorney generals, what happened with that is that the banks, now that settlement has been done, they're accelerating the foreclosures that they're doing. So it's even more, and it's estimated to be at least 2 million foreclosures this year.
2 million.
Yeah.
And this is something that I asked Mimi about, and I'd love to get your impression too. It's hard to understand what the banks get out of dangling someone on the line for 2 to 3 years to ultimately foreclose on a home, and to add that to a stock of closed, boarded up homes that the bank is already sitting on because the market is not worth it to them to put it on the market. What's motivating the banks here? What can they get out of what's essentially a lot of wasted money and time dangling the consumers and getting a house? Well, they've already got plenty of houses. What do they need this for?
Well, I mean, you can speculate, because you know that with the banks, their mantra is greed. So there's no way that they're going to take a loss when they know they can get money for the property. So they have to be getting it from somewhere. I guarantee you, they're getting it from somewhere.
And they've got enough of a buffer they can sit on all that extra inventory,
right.
Apparently.
And they can also. They're getting it from somewhere. I'm sure, they have insurance and stuff like that, federal insurance. Plus, they can sell the home.
I'm talking to Peggy Mears. She's with ACCE, the Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment, an organizer with them. So, Peggy, we talked to Mimi about what's happening in New York with what they can do with individuals who come to them and say, hey, I'm in foreclosure. I can't get the banks to speak, common sense with me. What's your procedure? What do you start doing for those people?
Well, we're an activist organization, so we're not a service organization. Mm-hmm. We don't do individual loan mods for our members. Mm-hmm. What we do is we actively go after the banks with protests, legislation, and with the protests, we take our members 50 to 100 to 200 to 300 at a time, and we call the media, and the media always accompanies us. That's the secret weapon. And we go to that particular bank, and that bank does not want the media to highlighting what they do to homeowners. So what they'll do is we demand that we always take a list of our members, and we demand that they look at their cases, and they'll tell us, okay, we'll take the paperwork and we'll look at the cases. They do that just to get the media off of them.
Wow, well, very effective.
Yeah. So although they will take the paperwork and say they'll look at it, it's just to get the media from capturing what they've been doing to homeowners. A lot of times they still won't help homeowners, but what we do is we wear them down. Just like they try to wear homeowners down, where homeowners will just walk away from their homes, we wear them down by constantly being proactive and doing our protests. And one of the things that we also do is we try to get legislation passed that will help homeowners. And we've been running into some problems with our legislators, and we're asking them, whose side are you on? Are you with the banks or are you with the people? Mm-hmm. And that's something that we need to know so that we can act accordingly, because if they're not with the people, then they shouldn't be in office, and we need to make sure that they don't be, if they're in office, that we can get them out of office, and if they're trying to get in office, make sure they don't get in, because the people put you in office, and that's who you should be for, the ones who got you to where you're at. So if you're not with the people, then you don't need to be in office. Well,
and that's another argument for getting public funding into campaigns and getting the corporate money out. Because right now, it's Wells Fargo and Bank of America that are putting these people in office. And
it's really sad because everybody thinks, oh, well, the banks are so big. I constantly get told this. The banks are too big. You're not going to be able to do anything to banks. And I always tell them that's the same thing they said about big tobacco. Ooh, I said, but they kept fighting until they were able to get a breakthrough. So now them having a monopoly on the court system and nobody being able to win against them is a thing of the past, and that's the same thing that's going to happen with the banks.
Let's talk about the Homeowners Bill of Rights. And this is, we have listeners across the country, and this is specific to California, but it's absolutely a template for what other states can do if the activist groups can get to work around that. Homeowners Bill of Rights, tell us about that.
Well, what it is, it's a package of bills, 3 bills actually, and basically the first bill is for what we call dual tracking, and that bill says that you cannot foreclose on someone that you're working on a loan modification with until the end of the process where they get an answer if they're going to get the loan modification or if they're not going to get it, but you cannot foreclose before a final answer is given to that homeowner. The second thing is a single point of contact. Most homeowners, when they're trying to get a loan modification and they call their bank, every time they call, they talk to someone different, and that person never knows what the other person discussed with the homeowner. Even though they were supposed to have put it in their notes, it's never the same information, and they lose paperwork and blame the homeowner, and homeowners are constantly faxing and sending paperwork back to them, the same paperwork over and over again. So a single point of contact will eliminate that, and it can make the process move a lot smoother and faster. And then the third thing is what we call private right of action, okay, which means that if the banks are working with a homeowner and they do something illegal, it gives that homeowner legal recourse to take the bank to court. So those 3 things will go, it's a start, and it will go a long way towards kind of like getting the banks in line. And because none of the programs that that the president has given to the banks have been mandatory and enforceable, the banks, people say, well, why are they doing this to homeowners? Why won't they work with homeowners? And I always tell people they do it because they can, because there's no one regulating them and telling them that you cannot do this. This is wrong. Well, this bill will put a stop to a lot of the illegal and wrong things that are being done to homeowners.
You're listening to Peggy Mears, who's with the Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment, an organizer with the group, and you can find more information on all of this at calorganize.org. Don't worry if you couldn't write that down. It's on our website for you, too, indeepradio.com. So, Peggy, if this were to pass, if these three pieces of legislation were to pass, and we have a homeowner's Bill of Rights in effect, tell me what's different about enforcement. And let me give that some context. When I talked earlier to Oriane Rousseau, there are rules about how the banks are supposed to conduct themselves now, and they just don't do it. Robo-signing is supposed to be illegal. They're still robo-signing. They're supposed to allow a certain amount of time to get a foreclosure in place. They're violating that. They had, Oriane and her husband Norman had 48 hours notice that their foreclosure was in effect. So how would it be enforced if this were to pass?
Well, that's one of the things. If you, just like any law, it's a law. So, if we are able to get this law passed, then we, the community organizations and legal aid and other entities are going to make sure that it's enforced. That's one of the things about ACE. That's why I tell you that we're an activist group, because we actively make sure that things that are supposed to happen or things that shouldn't happen don't happen. So it will be a law, and just like any law, if you break it, then you're going to have to be held accountable for it. But if they're not enforcing it, it doesn't mean anything. It's just a law that's not being enforced. With the private right of action, it gives the homeowner power to legally go after the banks. So that, in that respect, they have the power to make sure that it's done. As far as dual tracking and single point of contact, once they become law, there's going to be something in place to make sure that they're following the law. And the Attorney General, she is the author of this package of bills, and we all know that Kamala Harris does not play in California, so she will enforce these bills.
Let's talk about some of the arguments that we see coming already against the Homeowners Bill of Rights. The San Diego Union Tribune had an opinion piece that said, well, loans in California are going to need higher premiums, higher rates if this were to pass. It's going to, because they have all this additional risk to cover. They've got delays and regulatory compliance requirements. It's what we always hear about, well, this will be a burden on the business and they'll pass the costs on the consumer. The second point they make is that lenders will not make loans if you were to make it so difficult for them to do things their way. Well, they'll just stop making loans in California. What's your opinion on that?
Well, my personal opinion is those are what you call threats and blackmail, so that they can get their way. The banks spend $50,000 a day lobbying against any bills that are brought before the legislator that will help homeowners. So it's only natural that you have so-called conservative newspapers and Republicans and conservatives saying that this bill is going to hurt. So what if it hurts? Homeowners are already hurting. They're not going to stop loaning money.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Their business.
I can't imagine any major entities saying, "Well, that's just it. We'll never do business in California again."
Right. It's really blackmail. It's psychological blackmail, and to put fear into people, so that people think that this is not going to be a good thing for homeowners. When we know for a fact that it is going to be a good thing for homeowners, and the banks, in 2010, the executives at the top 10 banks got over $143 billion in compensation and bonuses, so maybe they can use some of that to help defer some of the costs that they think they're going to have. You know what I mean?
Exactly. There is money to be had out there. It just depends on what their priorities are. Well, let's talk, Peggy, in the case where right now we don't have that Bill of Rights. Some of the advice that we're hearing is if you're getting threatened with foreclosure, there are a couple things you should do. One is that you should demand the paperwork to do with your loan, because a lot of banks, frankly, can't produce the paperwork that says they have a claim to the mortgage. And secondly, don't leave your house. Don't get out of your house, because once you're out, you can't get back in. Do you agree with those? And is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, as far as the second one, don't leave your house, we often tell people that you stay and fight as long as you can for your home, because what the banks do is they try to wear you down so that you will leave your home. Don't leave your home. Fight for your home. There are ways that you can fight for and prolong being there, until you can work something out with the banks, because they're so used to people just giving up. They feel that, that homeowner is not going to be there. They're just going to give up. Just let's keep harassing them. Unless you get a situation like you have with the Rousseaus. That's what they do. They try to wear you down. They try to mentally and emotionally just terrorize you. And to me, it's like they're like terrorists in ties, because they're actually terrorizing homeowners. But as far as produce the note and those types of things, ACE, we don't really get involved in speaking on that. Like I said, we're not a service organization. We don't have the legal capacity to tell people, what to do as far as show the note and things like that. So you would have to basically, I guess, talk to like the Lawyers Guild or somebody like that in order to see how they feel about that. But that's not something that we deal with.
Well, what you do deal with, you're doing really well, and I commend you, and I thank you for your energy and for your time. Keep up the great work.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Peggy Mears is organizer with the Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment, ACCE. You can find out more about their group at calorganize.org. I know a lot of information, websites, and links went by this hour. You can find all of those on our website, indeepradio.com. You can follow us on Twitter at InDeepRadio, and you can take a look at our Facebook, too. We'd love to see you there. That's In Deep with Angie Coiro. Our executive producer is Gordon Whiting. Our engineer is Matt Fiddler. Cindy Myers helps out. Jill Fiddler runs everything else. Our incredible interns are Forrest Phillips, Kristen Stevens, and Megan Mena. And our theme is by Big Troubles. This closing theme back there, that guy singing, that's David Gans. Visit our website for web extras from Gotta Laugh and more. And be sure to join us back here next week. Thanks for tuning in. As ever, I'm Angie Coiro.
Damn way, we'll take our culture back someday, but it's gonna get worse before it gets better. It's gonna get worse before it gets better. It's gonna get worse before it gets better, but I know it's gonna get better.
Thanks for tuning in this week to In Deep with Angie Coiro, a production of Talkback Studios. You can get more information about us at indeepradio.com. And while you're there, you can become a member and support our work. There's a link there to contact us, too, with any questions or feedback. We're developing a series on mental health issues in our country, especially in this economy, and we'd love to have you be part of that. Please send us your topic suggestions, your stories, and your questions through our website. Click the contact button at indeepradio.com. Join us again this time next week for 2 more hours of in-depth conversation. I'm Angie Coiro. We'll see you then. You're listening to WPWC 1480 AM, Dumfries, Virginia. We Act Radio, home of Washington's progressive working community.